Let's start our conversation there with Mike Ferrin, who's just a terrific resource for baseball fans and Padres fans on MLB Network Radio. Mike Ferrin back with us on Jon and Jim, San Diego Sports 760. So Dennis Lin in The Athletic wrote in a mailbag today about the idea, the possibility of maybe moving Hyun Soo Kim because the Padres have holes, and how do you fill them with some of their salary issues that they're experiencing right now as well. Would you entertain that, Mike? Hyun Soo Kim coming off the year he just had with 1 year left on his deal. Should the Padres go down that route or not?
I mean, I think you have to listen to everything, right? As painful as that might be, and as good a player as Kim has been. But I think you have to be prepared for just about anything. If you're the Padres, if you're going to try and get to a spot where you can compete this year, there were two outfielders on the 40-man roster?
Right. Yep.
So,
yeah.
I mean, I think you have to consider it. I think the problem is that, if you're dealing Kim, what are you getting? The return on players a year from free agency isn't always great. So are you doing it to move salary to be able to sign a free agent that you feel can impact the roster? With the idea of, let's say it's, Cody Bellinger, where you can move Cronenworth to second, then maybe that makes sense. If it's you're trading Kim for somebody who might be available for, on a 1 year deal to just kind of shift positions because Cronenworth really isn't a first baseman. He's better served to play second. Then I guess I can see that. But, I was thinking about some of this today. Like the Jesus Luzardo talk, the fact that the Padres have not been mentioned more regularly kind of surprises me. The Marlins have entertained trade talks. He's got 3 years of control left. He would certainly fit a lot of what the Padres need still in the rotation. And they have young players that I think would line up pretty well with what Miami should and could be looking for. So I understand why they would listen on Kim and why they're discussing it, but I'm sure that part of the reason he hasn't been dealt is because either A, they don't have the stomach for it, or B, they haven't been able to find a way to fill multiple holes by trading one player with 1 year of control.
Mike, with how many holes the Padres still have left, if they don't fill these holes with, legit major league talent and they decide to go to their system to fill these positions that of need, do you think that they still could be a playoff team this year? Or do you think they have to make at least one more move, potentially sizable move, to fill a left fielder, center fielder, left-handed starting pitcher? What do you think on that?
Well, they definitely need outfielders. And I don't think that, what are they going to do to fill that spot? Jacob Marcy, who hasn't really played above AA, if they're going to go internally, Nathan Martorella, who played, some left field this year, but is really a first baseman and doesn't have impactful power. I'm not sure has impactful power. He didn't show it in college. He showed better power in pro ball. I don't think you can look at those guys and say, man, they're going to jump right into the lineup and be an impact. And I think even with Jackson Merrill, who's going to be a pretty good hitter, it's a big difference between making the jump largely from AA to the big league. It's not impossible to do, but most guys struggle with it. And so I think that they probably need more talent. I mean, one of the things that they need is they need to fill these major league holes, but they also need depth. And that's something that really bit them, I felt like last year, is that this is, I think, something we've talked about a fair amount, is that I think one of the most valid criticisms of the A.J. Preller era has been that they haven't always had a roster that seems like it has really functioned well. He's been really good at acquiring star talent, but it hasn't necessarily had the secondary pieces that, if there are injuries or if there are poor performances, that you can turn to. So, I think it's hard. I'm hard pressed to see a way where all of a sudden the farm system fills all of the needs that they have for the majority of the year, and that they're contenders. So going outside the organization is going to be a need. And I would be willing to bet that that's the way the Padres feel too. They've gotten their system back up to speed pretty quickly. And they have some talent that's there, without a doubt. I think they're a really good scouting organization, first and foremost. But I think that they know that there's a gap between when those guys are ready and what they need right now if they're going to try and make the postseason.
Mike Ferrin, MLB Network Radio, with us right now on Jon and Jim. Mike, is there any misreading, so to speak, of the market by A.J. Preller and this front office when you look at Seth Lugo and what he got, or Michael Waka, like that, they could have held on to a Lugo or a Waka, and now they're in a position where it looks like they've got three starters. There's question marks with Darvish and Musgrove and even Michael King in terms of throwing a full complement of 30 games as a starter. Like, did they misread it a little bit when it comes to a Lugo and a Waka? Because what other options are they going to have at this point that are cost effective?
Well, I mean, I think Waka and Lugo, neither of those guys made 30 starts either, right? So
Fair.
I mean, that's part of it. I don't think that they misread the market. I think they had to make some very difficult decisions on how they were going to get their payroll to a lower number, and the easiest way to do it was to decline the options on those players. That's basically what it was. This was not a misread on their part. This was the financial realities of what the mandate from ownership was. So, is it easy to fill those spots? No. Can you find another Nick Martinez or Seth Lugo or Michael Waka who can come in on, a lower guarantee deal to try and recoup some value? Yeah, I think that there's that possibility of finding those guys. It's still a pretty decent starting pitching market as it sits right now. There are a fair amount of good starters, basically average or better starters that are available on the market. Whether or not they can get into those price points right now, I'm not sure. But Marcus Stroman theoretically would be a fit. I think a name that I keep kind of seeing people bandy about, and I haven't seen it with anywhere credible necessarily, is Hyun Soo Kim would be a really good fit. In that ballpark, guy who he's able to give you 140 innings, he's been a really effective starter. I think Hyun Soo Kim would be a nice fit and probably be relatively inexpensive. Michael Lorenzen, the end of the season was not good for him, but I had a chance to see him in the middle of the year in person, and I thought it was the best that he'd ever looked. And I wonder how much of the end of the year was fatigue the first time starting through a season in a long time for him. I'm a big Michael Lorenzen guy. I think he really knows how to pitch. He's super competitive. He's a Fullerton guy, too. He went to Fullerton. He's basically, he is maybe the second best two-way player in Fullerton history behind Mark Kotze. I think he'd be a really interesting guy, probably in that $7 or $8 million range with incentives beyond it, that I think could be really effective. I mean, he had a really good slider last year, and he locked his changeup back in, which when it's on is a really effective pitch. But as a guy who pitches the back end of the rotation, I think you could do a lot worse than him. And I think he's a guy that certainly fits those kind of price points. I haven't heard him linked to the Padres at all, but he would be a name that would make a lot of sense, I feel like.
Yeah, no, those are great names to mention there as well. Going big picture here, Mike, it's been a quiet, not quiet, but it's been a slow, hot stove this winter. Why is that? And do you expect it to maybe pick up anytime soon, as being so close to spring training as we are right now?
Well, as somebody who, like you, has one sport in town that they cover,
yeah,
30 teams instead of just one. I would like it to pick up just a touch. I can't, beggars can't be choosers. I don't mind it taking into January. It does give us something to talk about, but at the same time, I'd like it to pick up. I mean, I think there's a couple of factors that are at play, right? Some of it was the nature of the top of the starting pitching market and the Ohtani and Yamamoto stuff. Some of it is something that Padres fans are all too well aware of, which is the television situation, which is impacting a number of teams. There was supposed to be a hearing today on the Valley's bankruptcy and MLB's deals, and specifically deals for the Rangers, Guardians, and the Twins. And that got pushed back another 9 days. So I think that could be part of it. And I think the other part is it's just not a great free agent class, right? Like last year's free agent class was really good. That's why you saw 40 of the top 50 guys go off the board before we got to January. This year, it's not quite the same. I mean, like, if you start looking down the guys that are in your market, you can find some pretty noticeable warts, right? Like, we just talked about Bellinger. Like, I think Bellinger would be a great fit for the Padres, but there are some pretty real questions about the quality of his contact. Matt Chapman's a tremendous defensive third baseman. He hits the ball really hard, but hasn't got very many results in the last 2 seasons offensively, outside of the first 6 weeks of last year, and who strikes out a ton. You guys saw Blake Snell, for better or for worse, last year. Like, Blake Snell's an awesome pitcher who can be really painful to watch because he puts a lot of guys on base. Seems like an awesome dude. Like, everybody around the Padres seems to love the guy. He's got a lot of good things going for him, but he walks guys. Jordan Montgomery is going to command kind of a free-force starter, and he's good. Don't get me wrong. Jordan Montgomery's a really solid starting pitcher. He's not the guy that you go out the street, man, that's a 9-figure guy. That's the top of the free agent market that's left right now. And I think that's a big part of it, is that they're trying to push to the biggest number that they can. And a lot of them are represented by Scott Boras. And Boras always gets the biggest deals for his clients. But at the same time, there's just enough there that it feels like there's pause. And quite frankly, outside of A.J. Preller and a handful of other guys, front offices just don't make many trades anymore that are need for need based on the major league roster. And that irritates the hell out of me because trades are the most fun, right? Like, that's the part that's the blast. You want to get your fan base excited from the entertainment standpoint, trades do way more than free.
Well said, Mike. Mike Ferrin, MLB Network Radio. We probably have about 90 seconds, but if you were forecasting projections in terms of free agent dollars for a Blake Snell and or a Josh Hader and or where they may end up, I mean, what are your front runners here for a Snell and a Hader? Is Hader going to get 100 like Diaz? Is Snell going to get 150 range? What are you thinking?
I mean, I think Snell in the end is going to get a pretty sizable deal. I think it's going to be north of $140 million. I think, maybe 150-ish. That probably makes about right. For all of the things we talked about that are concerns with him with the walks, I mean, there's still nobody that misses bats that's on the market quite like Blake Snell. And, he has been relatively healthy the last couple of seasons, and he does have a couple of Cy Young awards on top of it. So I think he'll get there. The Hader question is really interesting. I'm a little surprised that there hasn't been a more robust market for him. Now, maybe it's because Philadelphia, who would seem to be a team that would look for a closer like him, has kind of sat out the market because they largely have their needs filled, or if it's Texas because they don't have their television situation settled. Hader being out there, I don't think it's out of line for him to ask for the biggest contract ever for a closer. That makes sense. He's been really, really good. It's just a matter of finding the right fit, and I haven't seen that one yet. And so I'm a little more skeptical on him just because I'm not sure where the suitors are versus Snell.
Mike Ferrin, MLB Network Radio. Great stuff for our listeners here in San Diego. We'll do it again, hopefully, when we get closer to spring training. But thank you for taking 10 or 15 minutes for us.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, no problem, guys.